And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley. What is up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success Morning Coffee. This is the Robert Watson edition for Ars Victorious. We're talking about his book, as we have been for the last, well, this will be week 6, I think. We're in 6th chapter, right? So
Yep,
we're moving right
that's
along.
the progress, not perfection.
Yep, exactly. So,
Yeah, because it sure wasn't this morning. So,
which happens. We have those moments in our lives when things happen. And yesterday was one of those for me too, because I recorded and I didn't have very good audio for some reason, and I just didn't upload it because it sounded like crap, and I wasn't going to stop. So TikTok got the show while everyone else got crap.
yeah. When we see those shows go off on TV that are live, we really don't realize how difficult that is.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Well, we're moving right along. We got to be getting close to the book release. I mean, we're a week into February, man. So it's getting crazy.
Yeah, I'm about ready to hand it off to the formatter, and I'll hand it off to the formatter over the weekend. So then the formatter takes a week, and then we'll be live. And I don't know how long Amazon takes, so it's something like the second or third week in February when we're there.
Tell us about that process a little bit, because it's interesting. Like you're going to send it off to Amazon. I think that's the way that a lot of them go. So it's going to be a digital book first, right? Before, and then do people have the option of like, hey, I want the hard copy, so they just hit submit and they print them off as they go, or how's that work?
Exactly. So the whole process from the beginning to end is really complicated because you write a book and then you send it to an editor, and the editor, cleans up whatever they clean up. Then you go, believe it or not, to a copy editor. Okay. And then the copy editor double checks things like your citations, and like you tell them a style like APA 7 or Chicago 17, and then they go through and they make sure that the book adheres to the style. Okay. And they also are allowed to check on spelling and whatever. Then you send it to a formatter, and then the formatter puts it actually the way it will look on the page, including all the proper copyright stuff in the front. Then from the formatter, it then goes to actually the publisher. And at that point, the publisher defines what the format is. In this case, it'd be EPUB, or, whatever you call your version of an e-publication.
Uh-huh.
And then according to the way Amazon has it set up, if you select, because you can't see that there's not 10,000 printed. What you see is hard copy. And so you push the button hard copy and it basically prints it.
Okay. Does, and so that's pretty much where it's going to be distributed. Are you going to do an audio version of it at some point? Is that in the works?
Well, there's been several people that have asked. One, my sons just thought it might be best that I did the audio. I'm not sure that I'm thrilled about doing the audio, but we will see. We kind of been back and forth, and we'll just see. I have mixed feelings one way or another. I really do not want to sit and read my own stuff for, the better part of a couple hours.
I would encourage you to do so, because it sounds much better coming from the author. I will tell you that.
No, I totally agree. I'm just, it was last night I was talking to a friend, and she said, are you ready for tomorrow? And she said, well, aren't you going to study for the chapter? I said, I lived it. I said, I think I can remember it. I said, I think I'll be okay. And she goes, are you sure? I said, yeah, pretty much. I just need to know what chapter we're in.
Yeah, this one is a good one. I read this story before. I was reading it this morning because that's what I kind of do. I brush up on them in the morning and make sure that I have them fresh in my head. But I remember reading this one off of your blog, so it's kind of an interesting story to hear. But we're talking Limitless this week, and it's crazy. It's crazy how quickly you have to think in these situations. I'll kind of set it up a little bit, and then you can tell us a little bit about it. But you were jumping out of a plane with a parachute, and it did not deploy properly, correct?
Right. So this was actually my first free fall jump. So back in the day when I did it, left the plane with two instructors, and they weren't attached to you. They were just holding on to you. So basically, we deploy, and they're just trying to make sure that you don't, even though I had jump experience, they make sure that you don't black out, right?
Hmm.
And so that you're stable and you don't go spinning around and all that kind of stuff and knock your own self out. So I got out of the plane. What was so funny about the story is, I love this, is so my flight instructor, or my jump instructor, jump master, we all pile in the plane and we're all in there like sardines. And he taps me on the back and he says, "Here's the deal. If we get to 2,000 feet and the plane stalls," he says, "I'm going to pull your chute and push you out." I thought, "Oh, okay." And of course, I'm like always asking the question, "Okay, what happens if we don't get to 2,000 feet?" He said, "Well, you're going to die." I said, "Cool."
Awesome.
I
It's a good backup
said,
plan.
"All right, that's good to know." And so then the next thing that happens is the pilot gets on the plane, and the pilot's wearing a parachute.
Oh.
And I went, "Okay, excellent." I said, "This is a really, really good start." I said, "So, okay, fine." So we get to the point of loading up to jump, and he says, kind of stick yourself halfway out the plane and hold on to the plane. And I'm like, hold on to the plane? There's nothing to hold on to, right? So the one flight instructor is out on the wing, and I'm sitting kind of in the middle, right, holding on tightly to the edge. And the other flight instructor, he says, "Jump." And all I'm thinking is, I just went out of the damn airplane as fast as I possibly can at this point, right? And so I just happened to, I don't know why, but I went to look to my left, and there was the tail of the plane right back there. And I'm thinking to myself, I sure hope I fall fast enough, because that tail looks painful, right?
Yeah.
If you get smacked on the head.
Right.
So, these are all kinds of weird little thoughts coming through my head. So we took off, and we went through our little procedures and stuff. And so I went to pull the chute, and I felt the pop. And the thing you get is, there's two straps that are basically real close to your private parts, right? And it just jerks you up. Well, I realized it from jumping before, that the jerk, how pleasant it was never pleasant, but it wasn't pleasant enough. Meaning, I felt it. I went, "Uh oh, that wasn't strong enough," right? Because I had chutes pulled before, and I looked up, and my chute's half open,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Oh crap." And so the worst thing that can happen is you get a riser that doesn't go all the way up, and that gets you stuck, and you got a partially open chute. So what happens now is, you either got to try to untwist the lines, or you got to cut away and pull your reserve. The only problem is that your reserve is going to go into your main, because your main's cut away and it's taking air. And so a lot of times what happens is, your reserve won't fully deploy.
Yeah.
And so it will it's one of those ones that will actually kill you, because you don't get it fully deployed. And of course, you're running out of time now, because you pulled it about 3,000, and so you're falling kind of like a stone still. You've got a little bit of drag, but you don't have enough drag to survive the landing. And so you just start going through your procedures. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I've got to, the word I used was different, but let's just say, I got to fix it. That was not the word I was thinking at the time. And so I start going through these procedures to, basically yank my straps apart, so that my riser will get up, and I have to spin myself and spin myself and spin myself. I think it was the third or fourth time. All of a sudden, the riser shoots up, right, and I get another jerk between the legs, right, of the two straps, and like smack, right, which is telling me I fully deployed.
You got it.
And I probably was at about 1,700 or 1,800 feet at that point.
Oh
So
yeah.
I
So
didn't have
long.
much of a,
Yeah. Luckily,
yeah,
that
I didn't have
probably
much,
slowed you
I
down
didn't
a
have
little
much.
bit, because if it didn't, the little bit of drag that you were getting probably slowed you down enough. Because you said 2,000 feet would be detrimental, right? That, like, if you don't get it out by then, you're probably gonna die.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can do a low opening, and you can probably do a low opening at 800 or 900 feet, but that's not optimal.
Yeah.
So not only now the fun part was, I was now off course, so now I wasn't going to hit the drop zone. Right, I
Right.
ended up in some field. And so, and I didn't end up in a normal farmer's field where I could run out my thing. I ended up in a planted field, which means that it was soft.
Oh
So what
yeah.
happened was when I hit, my feet went in the ground, which is, they got purchase, and then I just
Uh,
kind of fell over forward,
yeah.
which wasn't the worst thing in the world. But one of the things that is so important is the idea is once you become fearless, life becomes limitless, because we put ourselves in a position oftentimes where we have an inability to cope with challenges. We have an inability to cope with malfunctions and problems. And that comes because of fear. We just freeze. And I had been through so many failures and so many problems and so many near death experiences that this was just one more. And it kind of, you reach the point in life where you just go, well, okay, if this doesn't work, I'm going to die. Okay, cool. No big deal. Let's just, go through our procedures, all that kind of stuff. So I really didn't get upset or anything. I got down when I hit the ground. My instructor looked at me, goes, "Good job." And I said, "Yeah, yeah." I mean, what are you supposed to say? I mean,
Right.
you just did your job, right?
Yeah.
You didn't do anything miraculous. You didn't walk on water or anything like that. You just did your job. And he just looked at me like, he says, your heart rate's not even up. I said, listen, man, I've had so many near death experiences. This is just one more. And you just want to be able to cope effectively with whatever your problem was. I remember driving one time with my youngest son, and there was a truck in front of me, had a big piece of metal on the back of it, right? And this big piece of metal comes off the back of the truck, and we're doing about 60 miles an hour on the freeway. Comes back, it bounces off the ground and comes up level, right, to kind of decapitate us,
Mm.
right? And this is all happening within milliseconds. And so I just accelerated my car. I threw the metal, and the metal just went just over the front of the car, over the front windshield and out the back. And people are like looking at like, what was that decision making like? And I said, just like any other problem, just trying to get beyond the problem. You just, and I mean, you're talking about, I don't know, 3 seconds,
Yeah.
but that's all you have. And so you just, everything goes in slow motion, and you just kind of take care of business. And my son went, "Whoa, Dad, that was so cool." And I'm
Right.
thinking, yeah, that was what we want to say.
You don't know
That
how cool, how uncool that was.
was it. Oh, that was so cool. Yeah, okay, there you go.
Yeah, it's crazy. You think about it. It's like I was talking to a friend the other day, um, who was telling me about like he actually lives in Texas, and he was talking about driving around, and he's got a big old grill guard on his truck because there's so many deer around there where he lives. And he's like, because I've gotten to the point where it doesn't matter. He's like, people, when people hit deer, the big thing that they always do is like they're always trying to swerve. They're always trying to miss an animal. They're not trying to hit it or whatever because they don't want to hurt it, and that's the worst thing you can do. And it's kind of like one of those deals where don't dodge it, just go. Just hit it straight on, and you're going to probably have a better chance of surviving than you would if you would have swerved and missed it and gone off the road and rolled your vehicle because you're trying to save some poor animal that, you know,
Yeah,
you feel like your
yeah,
life is a little bit more important than their life's a little more important than yours when you're not thinking, right?
yeah,
So,
and those, all those decisions are so fast, but you kind of have to be committed to a plan of action, and that's why practice is so important in preparation and training, because the indecision part is unacceptable. Indecision you're dead.
yeah,
I don't mean that in loose terms. People are like, "You're dead." You take that so casually. Well, the alternative is you're dead.
yeah,
As you saw with I think the first chapter was when we were dealing with the plane crash. It was like, I had forever in that plane crash compared to the jump, compared to the sheet metal thing. I mean, I had forever. That's an
right.
eternity. I probably had like 2 minutes. You
To
don't know how
figure it
long
out.
2 minutes are.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, tons of time. People are like, "That's just crazy." I'm like, you realize that time is very strange when you're in a predicament.
yeah.
Um,
It's I was thinking about that yesterday. We were It's so weird how fast time seems to be going. Like I was talking to my brother-in-law, and I posted about this on TikTok yesterday. I was talking to him about him getting this promotion. I'm like, man, I mean, it's been like a year since you got that promotion. It's like, it's been 3 years since you got that promotion. That's how sometimes it flies so fast. And then like in the heat of the moment, when you're in one of those things where you have to make a life, like a quick split second decision, it slows down and you're like, oh man, that is slow motion. Like I saw that coming, and I can react to that faster if I just kind of pay attention to what's going on. It's weird.
Yeah, your focus is what makes all the difference, right? Is your ability to be in the situation and see it and not be afraid because I think like with the jump, my the it all kind of made sense about an hour later, right? An hour later it was like, oh, okay. Training worked. Everything that I had prepared for worked. I didn't panic. I mean, I don't know what panic would have done for me, but I didn't panic. You just kind of, and I thought about all the flight training and stuff like that, and how had all prepared me. But I also even thought back to to football, right? To the simplicity of a situation and how long you have. Like in college, dropping back at quarterback is about a 4 to 5 second experience.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at the pro level, it's between 2 and 3 seconds. Okay, so you realize that you basically, as you plant your back foot, right, as you drop back and you plant your back foot, the ball needs to come out,
Right.
right? So as you're backing up, you're paying attention to what you see. 3 step drop especially, you're paying attention to what you see. When you hit that back, the ball needs to come out, because if the ball does not come out, you've wasted too much time, and those guys that are trying to kill you are going to try to kill you.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I keep explaining to people, and they're like, "Well, when do you do your second read?" I said, "Well, in candor, I've done my first read when I backed up.
Yeah.
I said I'm looking at mismatches. I'm looking at my first read. I'm on my second read. When I hit that back foot, if I've went to the third read, I'm off to the races, because I don't have time for this.
Right.
You don't have time to go, well, is he going to come open? What do you mean, is he going to come open? No. Either you've got the mismatch you want or you don't. And if you don't, there better be a plan B. That's why your
Right.
check down's so important, right? You fire your check down. Or as I said one time, I think I threw the ball into like the 10th row of the stands, some shit like that, right? It was
Yeah.
because we're on like the 6 yard line, and I turned right where my receiver's supposed to be, and he's supposed to slant in. Well, he fell down,
Oh.
right? There is because it's a turn and throw. There is no secondary. There is no check down,
Right.
right? So basically, I just threw it into the stands. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just like, well, there is no option, and you don't. And remember, they're in a goal line defense, so I'm not going to turn and run into the line.
Right.
There's anybody there. So yeah, you just throw it in the stands.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you think about that. You think about like I was reading. It's amazing to listen to. I'm trying to think. The Score Takes Care of Itself with Bill Walsh, and talking about the West Coast offense and how it began, and how he had Joe Montana doing what he did, and how Jerry Rice would run the perfect route, and that's what they expected. So I don't even. A lot of times I wonder if Montana didn't even have to really think about it. Like he knew that Jerry was going to be right where Jerry was supposed to be, and so he just stepped back and boom, that's it. And if he's not there, he's not there. I know they took secondary reads, but the way that was set up, it was to surprise people, and if he's not there, that same thing happened, right? Like you're throwing it right to that spot, the only spot you have that you've chosen to throw it to, and if no one's there, then no one's there. You got to get rid of it.
Yeah, Montana wasn't particularly mobile, so it wasn't like you knew that he was going to extend the play. I mean, it was very different with Steve Young,
Yeah,
because you knew that if the primary wasn't there, Steve Young could make something happen with his feet
yeah,
and buy time to go the second and third read. But like you said, that offense wasn't set up to do that. That offense was to fire the shot,
yeah,
to turn and fire. And yeah, that's kind of what you end up in all this stuff, whether you're jumping out of airplanes or you're doing your first and second read, whatever the situation requires. And at that point, you're like, Okay, what's my primary? My primary problem is to get these, is to get the riser to go up. What's your second issue? Cut away,
Yeah.
right? And really, truthfully, I'm not sure that at that point I was committed to cutting away because I knew what the problems were. And incidentally, the weirdest part is, somebody can actually go down with two shoots open,
Oh yeah.
and it's very rare. But the point is, the first one, what happens is you attempt to cut away and you can't. And so you open the secondary chute, and the secondary chute opening triggers the first one. So you actually see somebody coming down with two canopies.
Yeah. It's crazy
And,
thinking about like the way that that's going to work though, because like my first, when I'm reading through this, the first thing I'm thinking, oh, he's going to cut that cord. But then I start thinking about like, you see these videos of people in parachutes free fall, like they're spinning because the chute is not
Mhm.
actually allowing them to go straight down. I mean, what's it?
Yep.
You got a knife in your pocket and you're going to try and get this knife out of your That's what you do, right? You cut it with a knife, or how do you?
No, you have a pull here, which is called cutaway, and
Uh-huh.
the release is a simultaneous. It releases the primary and pulls the secondary. It's one pull. It's right across your
Oh,
chest.
okay. And so the
Yeah,
the
because
the scare is that it's going to get caught when you go to cut away on the next one.
right. Well, what's happened is the primary is sitting there and it's not really hasn't really moved because remember it's not open,
Uh-huh.
so it's only partially open. So as you're pulling it and it's releasing, the secondary is opening, but the primary is still there, and what it's doing is taking air,
Yeah.
and so then the secondary doesn't fully catch, and so you've got one chute kind of into the other one.
Yeah.
And I actually, to be honest with you, I've never seen the malfunction. I just know what it's supposed to do.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm like, I don't want any part of that.
Let's try this first and
And
see if that takes care of it before we have to take that secondary option.
right, and the part I laughed about was the bruising inside my legs because I got hit twice, and
Yeah.
I was in somebody else's chute, so I was with somebody else's rig, so the rig didn't perfectly fit me, so the impact, my inner thigh impact was a little more than it needed to be. Eventually, what you do is you get fitted for your own rig, so your straps fit just right and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, it's one of the joys of everything you do. You eventually realize that you do want it tailored to you.
Right.
But the fearless part is one of the things I was talking to a friend about is realizing how many of our decisions on a daily basis are triggered by fear. Like, well, that's not going to work out well, so I'm not going to do that. Well, that's just fear.
Yeah.
And what it can do is immobilize you.
Hmm.
And that's one of the things you see so much in people is they just freeze or they just say, well, I'm not going to do it because I'm afraid. And I'm like, well, in my case, you don't really have a choice. You're forced into decision making because you're going down a black hole tunnel and you're not going to make it. So you learn to the consequences in everyday life are not as drastic. So people
Right.
can sit in fear much longer.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. I was thinking about when we first started talking about like how this thought process has come to you. I mean, obviously you've been here a while. When did you decide that this was going to be the way that you lived your life? I mean, was this at a young age? Did it cuz like I feel like for me thinking that way, like someone told me yesterday, it's like you always have a backup plan. And I'm like, yeah, always a failure to plan is a plan to fail. And I feel like, I'm working through some stuff with my personal life that it's like, this isn't working out right now. What's the next step? What am I going to do? How am I going to try and rectify this situation if I can't? And I think that a lot of people don't, they're so scared about the first result that they don't want to plan for the second result. They're afraid to fail. And I don't know that I would have taken those risks, 4 or 5 years ago, but now I've gotten to this point where it's like, this is where it's at. Like I'm going to bet on myself. And it took me, 39 years to figure that out. Although I had a lot of the tools, I just wasn't willing to take the chance.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the Plan B thing, and there's this whole ethos running around, especially on social media, that says, I wanted to be a singer, so I never had a Plan B. And they literally actually in psychology look at the issue of Plan A versus Plan B. And my response was really simple: was, are you serious? You don't have a Plan B? Well, yeah, you should never have a Plan B. I said, well, I don't think you want to get in a plane with a pilot that has no Plan B. And they're like, well, that's different. I said, no, it's not different. You always have we always call a plan B, which is your alternative, and then a plan C, which is chaos.
Right.
Okay, so there's chaos. What are you going to do in chaos? All those things matter. And, like you say, you always have to have a plan B and you have to have a plan C, which is when every other plan goes to crap. Right.
Right.
Uh, and so this whole meme running around that, I don't have a plan B. Well, okay. I'm glad I had a plan B on that parachute job.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Because
as
plan
simple as
A.
like GPS. Like I use GPS every single day in my truck, and
Mhm.
it tells me where I'm going, but I'm like, I never expect it to be perfect. And there's so much road construction going on here. It's like, well, I know
Mhm.
if I can't go that way, like if I get there and there's a detour, I know I'm going this way, or like I don't believe that way is faster. I'm going this way. Like in my mind, I can basically just do the route in my head too, because that's what I do. Like I'll run through different scenarios of, well, if I go that way, then I'll get here. If I go that way, then I'll get here. If I go, and then like I'm going this way and here it is. And then if I get detoured, I have an alternative. It's like your mind starts to get that way if you plan, and the plan doesn't always go as expected, just like you said. So it's like, what are you going to do when there's plan B? And then chaos doesn't ensue sometimes. That's plan C. That's a good way of putting it. I was, this isn't going to work at all. Now we're late.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What's happened? Well, everything's went to,
Yeah.
and what do you do? You work your way out of it. That's one of the battles that everybody faces is they're like, well, what do I do in chaos? And the answer is you must find calm in chaos.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, that's my quote for the day. In the midst of chaos, you must find your calm.
Right.
Why? Because who else is going to make the damn decisions? Really, you're going to let the universe make the decisions just arbitrarily? Are you going to like let somebody else make it for you? I don't
Yeah.
think so. You still want to be making decisions. They may not be particularly good, but you know it is what it is.
Yeah. Panic. You let panic set in. I mean, it's one of those things where it sounds cliche, but it's like, it's time to just now we're going to take a deep breath and rethink this whole scenario. What can we do? And
Well, I have this funny story all the way back at in high school. My high school girlfriend came back from our freshman year in college. I was at one college, she was at the next, and she's saying, I'm ready for the next step. And I said, what's that next step? She said, marriage and then eventually kids and all that. And I went, I'm not really ready for that. So I did the thing that a kid does at 19 years old when confronted with the rest of his life. I joined the army.
there was plan B. I'm out.
Plan B, I'm out.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, she was not really happy because I think I told her the next day. I said, well, I've joined the army, and I think this is like a Wednesday. She said, when are you leaving? I said, Friday.
That was when you had to go right away.
Yeah, that's it's like I'm leaving. She's like, you're leaving? We're not going to spend the rest of the summer together? No.
Yep. I'm out. You scared me.
Yeah.
This is
And
not
I
good.
got letters, of course, from my friends going, where'd you go? Army.
I had a
I'll be back.
conversation I had to get rid of. I'm
That's
out.
it. I was like,
Oh man, that's crazy. Well, as always, it's been a good one. We are next week. We've got Playing for Keeps. I look forward to that conversation. And
And the weird part is, okay, playing for keeps is about love.
yeah.
And it's what? It'll be Valentine's Day.
Oh, really? Is Wednesday Valentine's Day? It
That
is. Yeah.
says Valentine's Day.
See, here's
And
the
it's just,
problem.
I mean,
I don't care.
don't say that on live.
I'll be all right.
His wife. That's it.
It's interesting. Like Valentine's Day means something. When you don't have kids, it's like it's a little different. Like, but when you have kids, it's like, you can't go take her out. I got to take the kids with me. Everyone else is out on Valentine's Day. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I might get her some flowers and cook some dinner or something, but it's not the same thing.
No,
24
really
years
not.
in, it's like a different story.
Yeah, I just like the timing of it that we hit the chapter on love at the
Yeah.
same on Valentine's Day. That's pretty cool.
Yep. Well, we'll talk about love next week then.
Absolutely.
All
Appreciate
right.
you.
Yep. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for hanging out. Another edition of Ars Victorious on the morning coffee. And we will check out Playing for Keeps next week. Have a great week.